Welcome back in, everybody. Another edition of the First and Orange podcast. Parker Gabriel here, Ryan McFadden over there. Troy Renck back for the third time, I think, this year. Troy and I are not sitting next to each other on a 150-year-old couch in West Virginia. So it's a little bit different than the last time we had Troy on the show. But since then, Broncos have played well. They're 5-3. They've won 5 of their last 6. Sets up a big game on Sunday. It's actually the Ryan McFadden Classic this weekend in Baltimore against the Ravens. Ryan, obviously from the DMV area. We'll get into that. First, Ryan, you wrote about the playoff roadmap. I want to get to that. Just kind of the Broncos from here. How do they find their way? 10 wins almost always gets you in. How do they get to that? But Troy, first, let's start with this. What is the most surprising thing about this group so far? Because I don't think any of us, we maybe thought they had a chance to surprise, but I don't think any of us had them at 5-3 at this point in the season.
Yeah, I had them at 4-4 and then really struggling in the back half of the season because I had them at 6 wins, full transparency. I did have them at 4-4. I'll give 3 things quickly. Number 1, 3-0. We have won 3 straight road games.
Yeah.
As someone who's covered the last 10 years of the Broncos, they are worse on the road. They're Clark Griswold and the family truckster on the road. An absolute disaster. And they have won 3 straight on the road. I don't care who it's against. You need not apologize when you're a Colorado sports team and you win on the road in any sport. That's surprising. 2, the defense, the 3 of us all thought would be better. We didn't think they had a chance to be historically one of the best Broncos defense of all time. I'm not comparing them to the Orange Rush. I'm not comparing them to the Orange Crush yet. But statistically, they have a chance to be a top 10 defense in the franchise history, which says something. And finally, Bo Nix is starting to evolve as a dual threat. We just didn't know the running was going to come first.
Right. Yeah.
Starting to show wow, if this guy throws the ball with some accuracy, they got something. So putting on the road, which they never do in the last 10 years, the defense better than expected, and Bo Nix is starting slowly to improve and develop in ways that you're like, okay, maybe they got their guy.
Yeah, Ryan, how do you categorize, because Bo ran wild against New Orleans and then was surgical throwing the ball against Carolina. And it also just so happens that those are 2 of the worst NFL defenses that you've seen by a combination of, injuries and just maybe not being very good and all of that. So what is real about what we've seen from Bo so far? What is yet to be determined? And I suppose then, maybe the answer is just we're going to learn over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
I think what's real about Bo, and it gets talked about so much, but his running ability, because that's the one thing that seems to not go away, no matter who he plays. His hit when he's able to scramble and move the ball down the field with his legs. No matter who he's played this year, that one element of his game has not gone away. What we saw in Carolina, I don't think we're going to see that every single week, especially when you got Baltimore this week. He might have an opportunity given the fact that they have struggled in terms of as a pass defense, but next week against the Chiefs, it might be a little bit tough to have that type of efficiency that we saw against Carolina. So that's the part I want to see. I want to see how he is as a down the field passer. We already know what he can do in the short and screen game, but I want to see more of what we saw against Carolina against stronger teams. And that would kind of be I think that'll be the determining factor of what you're going to get from him for the rest of the year and how far this team can go. Because if he's able to push the ball down the field the way he did against Carolina, man, that 10 wins looks more realistic. And it's key because you're going to have, at some point, you're going to have to, and Sean Payton mentioned it as well, and the team is teams like Baltimore, they might make you play one-dimensional. Where they are really good against the run. However, they're not extremely great against the pass. So it might be a situation where you're going to rely on Bo Nix to use his arm. And you need to see that because, and my other point is, you're going to get into games where the defense might not be at their best. And that's the reality of football. That's life. You're not going to, shut out teams every single week as much as you would like to and much as teams strive for. So you want to know if the offense, if you're in kind of like a shootout, you're going back and forth, that that Bo Nix and that crew, if it's the 4th quarter, you're down by a touchdown or you need to get down the field to score, that he can let the ball fly effectively to win the game.
Yeah, Troy, you've seen every quarterback from the Broncos that's on the T-shirt, right? With all the lines through them, where Sean Payton said, you gotta make sure that the next one doesn't get crossed out on the T-shirt in the post Payton era, and obviously going back before that too. Where, just in terms of sort of like where Bo's at right now, I guess all of these other guys at some point have shown that they showed a glimpse, right? I mean, maybe not all of them, but most of them at some point you saw something where you're like, boy, if he could just do that every week or most weeks or whatever, he'd be fine. The name of the game in the NFL obviously is being consistent and doing it over the course of time. So how much, and again, like I want to be fair to Bo Nix too. Like he's 8 games into his NFL career. He's not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination, but how much stock do we put into, okay, I've seen it against a really bad defense. Maybe in 6 weeks or a year and a half or whatever, he'll be doing this against, most teams, most weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you can get false positives too. I mean, the way Drew Lock finished up, his rookie year was Rich Gabriel. We thought we had something. You're watching it. I think he went 3-1. They had a winning record at home for the first time in years. And then he backslid, and they fired Cangarello. Part of it was the dysfunction around the coordinators changing. You saw glimpses of it with Trevor Siemian. Frankly, he couldn't stay healthy. Like in 2016, he was a borderline Pro Bowler, and he just body type. I mean, he's bigger than Bryce Young, but he's a small guy. He couldn't stay healthy, and then he got a concussion, and he got bent. I mean, it started that down. And Paxton Lynch, we never really saw it, frankly, other than the one game against Patrick Mahomes. When Mahomes played his rookie year, that was his lone game, where one time they used the offense that fit Paxton Lynch. He played well, but we never really saw it again. With Bo Nix, the difference I see, guys, having covered all these, because this is the 14th starter since man. This is the first one, which obviously they invested a high first-round pick, because Paxton was late. He was 26th overall, and Gary Kubiak did not want him. I mean, there's just no way around it. John Elway wanted him. Gary Kubiak did not want him. He made that very clear when he got there. He looked like a fish on a bicycle to take snaps under center. It was awkward and bad. Where the reason this feels different to me is Sean Payton's legacy is attached to this working with Bo Nix. He wants him, and the ego and the desire to win, intersecting with this quarterback, it feels different. It feels different. The surprising part to me, Parker, and you and I have talked about it in driving from West Virginia to D.C. to all these, is the lack of accuracy for Bo Nix. At times, I think you said, yes, the forward pass looked like, the forward pass looked like a foreign concept to this team. Like, what is going on? This guy completed 75% of his passes over 2 years in college, and all of a sudden he can't hit a simple crossing route. So, to Ryan's point, the reason it feels like there's something is Bo doesn't typically make the same mistakes multiple times. He might make it, but he doesn't make it multiple times. He protects the football, which usually young quarterbacks that struggle don't. So he's got that sense about him. And last week was the first week I saw him leading guys, catching the ball where they're able to get yards after the catch. That has not been present so far this season. And the reason that I'm encouraged by that is he did this in college. It's not like you're asking him to do something he's never done, Parker. We saw him do this against crappy Pac-12 defenses. I get it, but we saw him do it. Like with Tim Tebow, he didn't really even do it in college. Like it wasn't like we saw him pass. Like he never passed well in college. He didn't. Bo is a good passer, so I'm encouraged because of the buy-in across the board, from the ownership to Payton. With Nix to Payton, it looks like, and I say this with hesitation, he's starting to bend to Nix's strengths.
Yeah.
Starting to bend, because that was what we saw earlier in the year. Like, Sean, what are you doing? He's not ready to drop back 45 times. So I'm encouraged. I'm not ready to say he's the guy. I think that conversation is next November, but I'm encouraged by his leadership, his intangibles, he cares, his teammates like his work. There's so much around him that makes it feel like it could work, but ultimately he's got to be able to pass from the pocket consistently, and we haven't seen that against good teams yet.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, the thing about Bo coming out and in the draft process and all that was like, whatever anybody said about his talent, and some people thought he was a clean first rounder, some people thought he was more of a second rounder. A lot of people had him as the sixth of the 6 guys that ended up going in the first round. But the sort of like common narrative about him was that he was the most NFL ready. And like, I think maybe from a maturity and an emotional standpoint, you see the signs of that. But one of the things that I'm not sure we were right about or put as much credence as needed in, and some people did, but it's just that, like, you know, he didn't play in a huddle and he didn't play from under center. And he was sort of feisty about that in the pre-draft process when he get asked about it. But you see simple things like he's not as comfortable when he, you know, play fakes and turns his back to a defense and then flips around and is looking at it all post snap. And, you know, like you said, I mean, there's a big difference between Oregon Open and NFL Open when it comes to receivers. Like, he doesn't have guys running. Why, you know, Troy Franklin is, you know, this far ahead of the guy rather than running 3 yards beyond him, like it was a year ago or 2 years ago. And so there's all of these things, and there's so much learning. But I think if there's something to be encouraged about, it's that the stuff that hasn't come yet is mostly learnable. Now, the accuracy thing, it will have to get better. Like, it just will. And footwork can help with that. Processing can help with that. Seeing it cleaner can help with that. There's some things that I still think, like, we don't really know what the ceiling is. Is it, hey, you're a good serviceable NFL starter, and maybe that's enough with a good system and a good supporting cast. You can win like that. Or is it higher than that? I don't know. I'm not sure we'll know for quite a while still. But I think the things that he has struggled with are things that by and large are fixable, and that you trust that given his work ethic, he's going to get better at. And then the question, like, really the question that nobody knows the answer to is, like, does the development arc, you know, go in such a way that he even looks different 6 weeks from now than he does now? Or is it a year or a year and a half? And, like, either of those things for the long-term future are fine. That if at the end of next year, Troy, we're like, yes, he's obviously the franchise quarterback, nobody is going to care what week 9 this year looked like.
Well, let me ask Ryan this. Can't we see a scenario, Ryan, where he's a better, and I say this with hesitation, so it'll get taken out of context, but where he could be a better version of Jalen Hurts? Can he be that guy? I see a lot of the same traits that, you know, if they use him and call the game a certain way, you can win with Jalen Hurts, and Hurts turns the ball over way too much. That's what set him back from his MVP type year. But even if he becomes Jalen Hurts, even if we take the comparison, just statistically, if he becomes Jalen Hurts, can't you win and get to the playoffs and win in the playoffs with that type of quarterback?
Oh, most definitely. I think I think the thing is here, we got to realize if Bo Nix is like that, if that's his ceiling, that's fine. But as an organization, you're going to have to realize, okay, he's not going to be a superstar. He's going to be a star, but not a superstar. That means you're going to have to surround him with a bunch of pieces. So that's going to take time for the organization in terms of drafting well, you know, making moves in free agency. But when we look at Bo Nix and his skill set, I think there's something there to me. There's things I have not liked so far, and one of the things, but a lot of those things that I don't like about his game are things that I think he can improve on, and I'm confident he can improve on it is because each week we kind of see him starting to get better. We saw that in training camp. We saw it in the preseason, and we're seeing that now in the regular season a little bit. Like, he seems to figure out a way to kind of correct those mistakes. So that's why it gives me the confidence that at some point he's going to, like, you know, he's going to get better. He's going to improve. But yeah, I look at Bo Nix. There's something there. The way him being a dual threat guy, there's something there where I'm like, yeah, I think this team can win with this guy moving forward. If he continues to improve, he has all the tools to be a guy that you can win football games with. And it's going to come now. I think it's too soon to say, hey, this guy's going to be a superstar. Right. It's too soon to say, oh, this Sean Payton has found his next Drew Brees. I'm not there yet. Right. I think we need for anyone on social media that says that, I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit and let the guy get through one rookie season before we start putting those comparisons out there. But like when you watch how he plays, there's things there where you're like, yeah, I think this team can do something here with him. It's just about like, can you build around him? I think that's the same for any any franchise quarterback. Can you build around him? I think that's going to be the key moving forward. Are you going to be able to get
I don't
guys?
think the weapons are much. How many quarterbacks have worse weapons around them than he does? I mean, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have a one receiver. He doesn't have a star running back. He has, last week notwithstanding, very little production from the tight end. I mean, you're taking a guy, if we consider he was kind of a mid guy in a lot of people's minds, and asking him to elevate people around him. I'm like, okay, that's not entirely fair. Like at some point, Parker and I have talked about this. You got to go get him a number one receiver, don't we?
Yeah, Troy, that's what I was
evaluation.
That's actually, like, I think if you want to extrapolate on the Jalen Hurts comparison, which is kind of funny because Alex Singleton, when Bo got named the starter in camp, Alex Singleton, who obviously played in Philly, told me that Bo reminds him a lot of Jalen Hurts, both sort of like in the style, the way they play. I think Alex was there in 2020 when Hurts, started some as a rookie and then went on from there. And like, and some of it was demeanor too, right? Like it's not too big for you right out of the gate and all of that. But like, if we think about Philly, like take this year, Vic's got a really good defense there this year. They're young and athletic on defense. And then on top of that, like, okay, Jeff Stoutland's one of the best offensive line coaches in the game. Their offensive line is always good. It's good again this year. They've got, Saquon Barkley's their tailback. They've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith at wide receiver. Dallas Goedert at tight end. Like, there are real weapons there. Like, A.J. Brown is a legit number one. Devontae Smith's a really good number two. And Saquon's, one of the best skill position players in the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, if you build something like that around Bo, like, it's going to look pretty good. And Bo,
paint the picture, Parker. Paint the picture.
Right. We're doing the Sean Payton. We're painting the picture here around him. Like that all is really good. That all would be really good, obviously, and that's not going to happen overnight. I'm interested, and I don't want to go too far with the progress they've made. I'm interested in what the two young wide receivers, what the second half of their season looks like. They've played a lot the last 3 weeks since Josh Reynolds has been hurt, and they've played a lot together for the first time, and it looks pretty good. I mean, I've talked to people who say that the last 3 weeks, like defenses have had to play them a little bit differently. And part of it's because they're putting speed on the field,
100%.
And Marvin Mims,
athletes out there.
Yeah. Marvin Mims really hasn't done anything this year. But at least when he and Troy Franklin are out there together, you have to pay attention because either one of them will run by you. And Vele's really good in the middle of the field. And, obviously then you throw Cord into that mix too. And so like, it hasn't been a revolution, and the hard part of the schedule is right here in front of us. So we're going to learn a lot over the next 3 weeks. At the risk, I could just spend a half hour asking Ryan of all the places I should go, in Baltimore this weekend. But I do want to talk about this because it's one of the bigger. There's a couple late last year, Houston, and then New England that had real implications for Denver, but. Certainly since I got in the beat in 22, this is one of the more interesting, regular season games we've had. The Broncos are big underdogs, 9 or 9.5 points. Ryan, tell me, I mean, this might be an obvious question that was got talked about a little bit yesterday, but how does Denver's defense, as good as they've been, like how do they start the process of slowing down, Baltimore's offense?
It's tough because when you look at this match, it feels like something has to give, because you can do everything possible, try to stack the box, put so many people in the line of script, just try to contain Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson from running the ball. But I think the one thing people are forgetting, Lamar Jackson's a really good passer. Like that's been like one of the things that that was his knock.
17 touchdowns and 2 picks this year. So that's pretty good.
And the thing is, that was always his knock of when people criticize his game, that was that he can't push the ball down the field. He doesn't have the arm. Well, he's like among the league leaders in almost every passes statistic. So he's proven and their receivers have Rashad Bateman and all those guys and Zay Flowers have been solid this year. And Lamar has done a good job at spreading the wealth. Like he gives the ball. It's not just one guy. Like in the past where it's just him is Lamar and Mark Andrews buddy ball. They're spreading the ball around. So I think here it's gonna take these corners I think what's going to help to Denver's advantage in this matchup is that you do have really good corners and Pat and Raleigh, who, they're not going to give up a ton of explosive plays, and which you're going to need to do because I'm pretty sure there's going to be an emphasis in containing Derrick Henry because that's two MVP candidates in their backfield, and that's a challenge. So I'm interested to see how this works because one thing about Denver, which we talk so much about them being a really good pass rush, is they've been really solid against the run.
Yeah,
and I think that shouldn't go unnoticed given the fact what we saw last year with this team in terms of poor tackling and getting up a bunch of yards on the ground. The way they've been able to transform that over this year has been really impressive, and that's going to be tested here. You got Lamar and Derrick Henry. Pick whoever you want. Pick your poison right there. Both guys are really good at generating a bunch of yards down the field, especially Derrick Henry, who's I believe has 11 rushes for 20 plus yards this year. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw that statistics. That's insane.
And he's got two or three that are 75 or 80 plus.
Yes,
you just don't really see running plays like that in the NFL very often.
I think it's 187 and another one 81.
81, yeah.
Yeah, so it's two of them. This is going to be a tough challenge for them. But I think I feel like something's going to have to give here. You're just going to have a good
matchup. It's
such a good matchup. Yeah. That's the thing. It's such a good matchup. Is it something where you're just going to have to live with a few explosive plays in the passing game just to try to shut them down, or you just live with Derrick Henry rushing for 100 yards and you just, prevent Lamar Jackson from using his arm best possible? Either way, it's you're in trouble.
Troy, so Sean yesterday, he sort of pushed back against this. Something's got to give. And he's like, well, we got to help. It's not just about the defense. You got to play complementary football and all that. I thought there was something. I'll be interested to see what their offensive approach is because Sean, I can't remember if it was right after the Carolina game or Monday on his conference call, but he brought up this day that Bill Parcells came in once. I can't remember who they were playing. And he was like, all the coaches said, all the coaches were sitting around and they were thinking, okay, ball control, keep it out of the other explosive offense's hands, so on and so forth. And, Parcells came in and said, we just got to outscore them. And part of me, just knowing the way Sean's wired, part of me wonders if his vision of complementary football in this game is not 35 minutes of possession and trying to ram the ball in against a good run defense, but rather I think their secondary is vulnerable, and I think we might have to win this game, 34-31 or something like that.
Yeah, they can't win a rock fight with this team 2017, 17, 14. They'll lose that. If they try that game, and I've seen them try it, they'll lose 27-10 because they'll be in field goal position. They'll miss whatever. You can't win on the road kicking field goals, and you're not going to beat Baltimore scoring 17, 20 points. You have to think, and Ryan would know this better. He's way more familiar with Baltimore. For me, the baseline is 24 points to win this game. If you're going to beat and upset them, you got to be thinking 24, 27 points. That's a tough number for Denver against a good defense.
Yeah.
But for me, Parker, the blueprint is Tampa. You're going to come out. You're going to be aggressive. You're going to take the fight to them. We're going to punch them in the face. And maybe you get knocked out, but you're not going to win if Javonte Williams carries the ball 22 times for 61 yards. You're just not going to do it. Now, their rush defense is a little overrated because teams don't run on them because they trail.
Right. I think they've faced the fewest rushing attempts in the league so far.
Yeah, they crush teams, so they pass. But their pass defense, again, I've watched probably 4 of their games in full. The pass defense isn't an issue of just a lot of attempts. They've had issues with their pass defense. The new coordinator, I think it's Zach Orr, right, Ryan? It's not gelling. And maybe there's talk, maybe they let the wrong guys go, not McDonald, but even other coaches. They don't look the same on the back end. And that was demonstrated against Cleveland. How does a guy get behind you in a situation like that? But it happened against Kansas City. It happened against the Raiders of all teams. They are vulnerable in the secondary. So I'm with you, Parker, that Sean thinks that if they're going to win, they're going to have to pass. They're going to have to pass. They're going to have to do it aggressively. They're going to have to do it vertically. I do believe, having watched this Broncos team play Derrick Henry over the years, you can actually stop Derrick Henry if you decide to. If you stack the box, you can stop him. The problem when they played Lamar and quarterbacks like this is when they get outside the pocket. So you have this weird muddle rush of you come up the field, and players hated it, but it does typically have a chance is up the field, keep Lamar in the pocket, force him to beat you there. The difference now is he's a great passer. He wasn't great before. And I don't know where they're going to cover, how they're going to cover Likely and Andrews. Are you going to put Pat Surtain on Likely? Is Zay Flowers good enough to travel with for Surtain? I don't know that. But offensively, to your point, Parker, I say you got to go. You got to throw vertically. You got to surprise them. You got to use the tight end again in the middle of the field. Cortland Sutton obviously has to have a big day. I would rather they do that and lose 30-10 than try to control the game in a possession game. You can do the possession game against Kansas City. Yep. Their offense isn't as good. You can try to sneak a win against them that way. No way in hell you're beating the Ravens 17-13 in a rock fight. I think that if that strategy, I'll be so disappointed if that's their strategy, to be as conservative as possible and try to win by some 55-yard field goal. I hate that idea.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, they did slow Derrick Henry down 2 years ago. And obviously, like, so much is different. Like, Ben Powers was playing for them 2 years ago. And, you know, Nathaniel Hackett was the coach here and all that. It's almost not worth revisiting. But that was the game. Lamar got hurt early in that game. And they did slow Derrick Henry down. And they were playing like – they were rolling out this, like, 3 inside linebacker stuff. And it was really about that. And then it got even more about that when Lamar went out. And again, that was a 10-9 game. Denver just could. That was in the no touchdowns era of the Broncos offense.
Yeah, Broncos. But he was with the Titans on a Monday night game. They slowed him down with Vic Fangio and this.
Oh yeah. That's what I was. That was actually. It's funny. Yeah, obviously he wasn't with Baltimore in 22, but it was in the same stretch. They played Baltimore and Tennessee. The games looked exactly alike.
Right. They were terrible.
And they slowed Derrick Henry down with this like 3 inside linebacker stuff. They did similar to Baltimore once Lamar was out, but they lost both.
Plus, he'll games. Come off the field on third down if you're stopping him. He's not – everyone – like that Monday night game they played – who was it? Oh, the Tampa Bay, when the announcers – it was surprised me because Joe Buck's really good. But they're like, oh, Derrick Henry's not having a good game. It was like the middle of the second quarter. And I'm like, it's because he doesn't play on third down. So once they he just literally doesn't get on the field. Then all of a sudden he had an 80-yard run and his numbers look great. But I'm not worried about being beat by Henry. I'm not, as crazy as that sounds. It all centers on me with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
That he can beat you in so many ways that you're going to have to turn him over. You're going to have to keep him in the pocket. I would rather have him beat me through the air still, because if he runs wild, that means Henry's running wild. That means a rout to me.
Yep.
I think you could be in a game at their passing, and I could be wrong. I'm just saying I've watched it. I think I have a better chance to be in a game if they have to pass than if it's the Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson show.
Yeah, it really does, Ryan, feel like it's Pat, Riley, and J-Mac. And again, when you play a big team that can run the ball like Baltimore, you know, your first inclination might not be like, well, the nickel really has to play well. But I just somehow, some way, it feels like a game in which, you know, whether it's Andrews or Likely or just being stout in run support, despite the fact he's not very good or not very big, it feels like a game where the three corners, you know, Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, and Jaquan McMillan, the more that they can cover and play man down the field, you know, and then again, like you play man against Lamar and you can be in trouble in the run game. So it's just the chess match between Todd Monken and Vance Joseph is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. This is this is one of those matchups like you look forward to because you got a really, really, really good offense and a really, really good defense, and something like kind of was the theme yesterday. Something has to give at some point. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think to Troy's point is, I think you can't be conservative. You can't just try to eat up the clock here. You're just going to have to go in and just like jump on them early. Just try to catch them off guard. And this is the team to do it. I think I mentioned this to you last week, Parker. This is the opportunity to do it. Their pass defense has not been good. They've been struggling to create pressure. Their secondary seems out of sync, despite Marlon Humphrey, I think, has like 4 interceptions. Like they've been out of sync. Marcus Williams has who's supposed to be one of their top safety, hasn't lived up to expectations this year. It's just And maybe part of that is because you're getting a new coordinator, Zach Orr. But yeah, overall, I think they're very vulnerable there. And this is a team like when you look at the Ravens, they're a team that beat themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
That Jameis Winston is not AFC Defensive Player of the Week if Kyle Hamilton makes that pick. He's not AFC Defensive Player of the Week. Offensive Player of the Week if he does not if Kyle Hamilton corrals that pick against the Browns. That's the game. That was it right there. Baltimore wins that game if Kyle Hamilton makes that pick. So that's the issue, and we've seen that sometimes in the past where Baltimore is so good, but at the same time they beat themselves in ways you cannot imagine. Where you're at the end of the game, you're like, how did they lose this game? And that's the frustrating part about the team because each year they've been considered Super Bowl contenders, and rightfully so. You look at the talent on the roster, you look at it like, yeah, this team can definitely go to the Super Bowl and maybe win it. But to continue to do the little things, whether it's wide receivers dropping passes, whether it's your cornerbacks dropping passes, and they lose the game, or they'll. I think another thing here is I think they take certain opponents for granted, and you kind of see how they play it. So that's why it's like games like Las Vegas, they lose. Games like Cleveland last week, they lose. I don't know what it is. They seem the emphasis on the weaker opponents. I think they take them for granted, and at the same time, and then those teams turn around and do what they've done this year. So that could be Denver's advantage. Maybe they look at Bo Nix and that offense and say, hey, they might not be as strong as the Buffalo Bills. That's why I say, like you said, Troy, if I'm Sean Payton, I'm attacking them early. I'm not going to try to hand the ball off to Javonte Williams 20 times to see if he control the clock. Take advantage of this struggling pass game. Try to push the ball down the field and see what you can do. Like I would rather for them to lose that way than we're just watching a boring football game and it's 17-10. Like what do you at this point? What do you have to lose? And you look at the film and you look at how the Ravens have played. Like you can do it. I think Sean Payton should take that into consideration and just let it fly. Let Bo Nix go out there. This is a chance to make a statement for Denver, and I think that's the way to do it.
All right, most important question of the week, Ryan. What's on the table Saturday night at the McFadden household, and what time should we be there?
I don't even know. I might be asleep or my mom is going to order something. So she did a lot of cooking when I came back for the bye week. So I don't know if she's going to do the same this week.
All right. Well, we'll get all the recommendations down the way. Before we go, predictions, shootout. We thinking shootout. Ryan, how about you first?
I might go crazy here.
Do it.
I got the Ravens 27-20. I got Broncos 27-24. I don't trust Baltimore secondary. I do not trust Baltimore secondary at the moment. They have not done enough for me to they have not looked that good. I could be wrong here. I'm willing to come back on this podcast next week and admit that I was completely off. But I think the Broncos going to feed off this momentum they have. They just have this certain edge about them. They've had it all year. I think they have a chance to pull off an upset here in Baltimore. So I got Broncos 27-24.
There you go. Troy?
I like the Broncos to win until Baltimore lost to Cleveland. I just don't see Baltimore losing back-to-back games in that. I see a similar game that Ryan sees. I just see Denver losing 27-23 in a game it feels like they should have won, but they're close. I think there's value in that. I hate moral victories, but there's value in standing nose to nose with a team that could win a Super Bowl and taking their punch and not being just absolutely on the mat or on the ropes. So I see the Broncos losing a close game that gives them the kind of confidence that feel like they can beat Kansas City in Kansas City, because Kansas City is due to lose at some point. They're not playing great football.
Right.
Baltimore, because they just lost, I'll take the Ravens 27-23.
Yeah, the Ravens, I mean, they'd scored 30 plus, including, 41 twice, 4 straight weeks before losing in Cleveland last week. I'm excited for this one. I just will really enjoy watching Baltimore's offense and Denver's defense on the field. I'm with you, Troy. I mean, I think it's hard to pick against Baltimore a second straight week and all of that. And I just think they're probably, I think the playmaking ability, despite the struggles they've had on defense, is enough to just sort of get it across the finish line. So I'm in a similar ballpark, 27-20 Ravens. And then Ryan has permanent bragging rights if the Broncos pull this off. So that's it. This has been great. Thanks, guys, for doing this. Ryan, Troy, Parker, Denver Post, Broncos crew, all of the latest, denverpost.com/Broncos. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll have you covered from Baltimore as we go into November. Happy Halloween, by the way. As we go into a November that's really critical, 3 of the 4 games in the month are on the road. We'll know a lot more about this team, 2 or 3 weeks from now than we know right now, and we've learned quite a bit. So all the latest, denverpost.com/Broncos. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.